In today's episode of the Ultimate Chicken Enclosure, we're going to look at the electric fence that we've set up to protect it. And it's entirely off-grid, self-monitoring, and can even be checked from the house. Hello, welcome to English Country Life. Welcome to the inside of the Ultimate Chicken Enclosure. And today we're going to talk about the sort of perimeter security of this Ultimate Enclosure. And we described it in the past as almost like a Motte and Bailey castle, with this run being the inner keep of the castle, and then we've got a curtain wall outside it, and that's provided by the electric fence, that perimeter security that stops anything getting even close to the interior security. Now, that electric fence has been quite tricky to set up because this is a very long run. We've got doors at both ends, and that means to be able to walk through or to enter from either end, we've needed gates in the electric fence at both ends. The ground is incredibly soft. We all know how wet it's been lately, but that's meant it's actually quite hard to keep the fence securely staked in all the wind we've been having. So we've had to put extra measures in place just for that. We've no mains power in this area, and we don't want to lug batteries backwards and forwards, so we've had to set up an off-grid charging arrangement for the battery that powers the electric fence. And finally, because it's dark and it's cold and it's winter, we want to be able to check that the fence is working properly from inside the house, and we've achieved that too. So let's show you how we've set this fence up. It can be really confusing knowing where to start when you begin putting up an electric fence. Well, I think the place to start, if you're going to have them, is a hot gate, because generally that's also where you're going to bring power into the system. Now, there are two kinds of hot gates, and a hot gate, if you don't know, is a way you can enter and leave your electric fence protected enclosure without turning off the power. It's something that you can move without giving yourself a zap. And there's two kinds of them. There's a rigid hot gate, which is like a conventional small garden gate. It will stand up on its own, and that's really helpful because you can open it, leave it open if you want to carry something through with both hands. The other kind is a flexible hot gate, and that is a soft gate. It's almost like pulling up a pole from a normal electric fence. It clips in place, but obviously if you let go of that, it will drop to the ground and short your fence out. There is advantages and disadvantages of both. We're using the rigid hot gate here because we want to be able to stand it open if we're carrying things like lots of bedding through to get them into the main enclosure. One thing I think that's important to think about with the gates, and particularly with the rigid hot gate, is the positioning. Now, you can see here it's shown as like holding open that gate, that it will stand on its own, but what we're doing with the positioning is making sure that it isn't going to foul the door if we want to walk straight through into the enclosure. The one thing I will say with these is that you've got to get the poles in exactly the right place, because otherwise they're very hard to close again once you've opened them. So it's worth taking a bit of time to position the poles correctly. The other thing, and I know this is probably obvious to most people, but it's not been obvious to everyone, is the big double poles that support the gate have protectors on them. They are just there to stop people jabbing themselves when they unpack. They should be removed before you put the poles in the ground. Here now you can see how the gate works. You can open it, you can let it go, it stands up under its own rigidity, but you will see I'm using both hands to close it, and with a soft gate I don't need to do that. I can open and close it one-handed. On the gate there is this tail, and that tail is how you connect the gate to the power that's rolling through the fence. It's a slightly different system that goes on the mesh. It's basically a butterfly nut. So what you need to do is wrap the cable through that fixture, put a washer on the top, and then put the bolt through the standard clip connectors that come with the poultry mesh. And then there is a sort of butterfly nut that goes on top of that. Screw that up tightly and you'll connect the hot gate to the poultry mesh, and that is often where I will clip the power to bring power into the entire electric fence system. As long as you've only got one poultry gate, that's all you need to do. If you're going to have two, you need to create a patch lead on one of them to bring power across the gate, and I can show you that in another video if you want to see it. Now, before we install the fence itself, what we need to do is clear away any vegetation that's going to cause a problem. You can see that we've got wood chip on the ground. We've already cleared off the ground vegetation, because anything like a weed growing up that's touching both the ground and the fence is going to short out the fence and prevent it being effective. What Fiona's doing now is using branch loppers to clear any top vegetation that may be in the way, either that's going to grow into the run itself or that is going to foul the area where we want to put the electric fence. Now, electric fence come basically in two lengths, 25 metres and 50 metres, but our run is 18 metres long. That's the space we've got. So we're going to take quite a wide angle around the run. Now, we could completely encircle the run in 50 metres of one piece of electric fence, but that wouldn't allow us to have a gate at either end. So we're using two 25 metre lengths joined at either end with a gate. And what that's going to do is create a channel between the fence and the enclosure, and that's really important. So you can see the channel here on the sort of centre of the picture, allowing a walkway between the run and the fence. And that way we can clear things like fallen leaves that are actually going to cause fence problems. The vegetation free channel in place, let's get the fence in place. First things first, it comes in a bundle. Don't untie it till you've removed the safety caps from all the poles, otherwise it tends to fall over and flop everywhere. When it is delivered, your fence actually is concertinaed, and that's much better than being enrolled, but installing it is very much a two-person job. You need one person to push the poles in, and the other person sort of hold the bundle of fence and pass those poles one at a time to the person who's laying out the fence, then sort of shuffle out of their way and carry on like that. It works really well, but it is a two-person job. And inevitably, what you're going to find as you negotiate your way around your chicken enclosure is you've got obstacles you've got to get around. So here we've got a tree stump. Some of you might remember we felled a rotten willow in that spot, and we need the fence to go around that so it doesn't create something that predators can push underneath. At the far end of the enclosure, of course, we've got a second door to the run, so we need a second gate. So I've put that gate in place, and what I'm doing now is actually cable tying the end of the fence to the gate, because they've both got a pole at the end, and you could just push them in next to each other, but if you cable tie them, it firms the whole thing up. And because we've got two gates, as we mentioned earlier, we've got to put a little patch lead in place to patch across from one of our 25 metre runs of fence to the other one. The rigid gates come with a little patch lead, but if you haven't got any, we'll talk about making patch leads a little bit later in this video. Once we've got it patched across, then it's on with the second 25 metre run down the back of the poultry enclosure. Exactly the same process, laying it out, leaving a good channel to walk between the fence and the run so we can clear fallen leaves, etc. Now, this is my top tip. If your ground like ours is soft, if like us you're subject to high wind, put more poles into your fence. We sell them. Any reputable electric fence manufacturer will produce them, and where you've got areas that the fence is being shaken by the wind, that the ground is a bit waterlogged after heavy rain, if you weave an additional pole in between the poles that it comes supplied with, it will really prop that fence up. It prevents it sagging, and when it sags, of course, the live wires will hit that wet ground and it shorts the fence out, really affects the performance. It's worth noting as well that there are several types of pole. There's poles with a single spike and they're fine. There are poles with a double spike on the end, and they are much stronger if they're getting shaken in the wind. And finally, there are corner poles, and corner poles are a much thicker material that actually allows you to take the fence off at a 90-degree angle without it sagging on one side of the corner or the other. I'm going to be honest, where we are in the fence, we always order more poles, because really it makes managing the fence so much easier. One of the complexities that we've got with the ultimate chicken run is we don't have mains power in that area and we don't want to carry batteries backwards and forwards. So let me show you the solution we've got. This is called a fire drake, brilliant piece of kit. It's got a battery inside it, it's got an energiser, and it's also got its own solar panels. So in effect, it's a power source, an energiser and a recharging system all in one. It's actually really well designed so that when you turn it on the outside without having to look too much, you get a green flashing light, and that's telling you that the battery is in good condition. Now we're going to position this facing south across the fields with some open areas around it, and hopefully that will allow it to always recharge enough. But of course in the winter when it's dark and the days are short, that can be a problem, but even that has a solution. Let me open up the back of this unit and you can see there's the battery, you can see the leads running to the energizer, but if you look in the center there's a little silver port there, and that little silver port allows, if necessary in the darker winter, for you to recharge this unit from the mains if it's not getting enough sunlight to do the job. So all in all, a very flexible, very clever little unit that hopefully will sort us out. Spent a bit of time before installing the panel to try and work out where it was going to get the most sun. This is the south side of the ultimate chicken run, looking over the fields, but as you can see at ground level, the hedge is actually causing a great deal of shadow on those panels, and it's really not going to charge very well there. What I need is to be where it is, but up in the air, so that the hedge shadows are not obscuring those solar panels and they get plenty of sun, which, let's face it, is only for a short day in the winter. I can achieve that, and the way that I can do that, if you look at the back of the panel, there's a slot, and that slot takes a supplied bracket, so you can actually hang this panel on a bracket, and that's what I intend to do. I've got some bits and pieces, I'm a small older, we throw nothing away, and I've got an old fence post that I've cut a little bit shorter, used to be in the fruit cage, and I've got some spares of these fence post spikes. So I reckon if I knock one of those spikes into the ground and we put that bracket on the post, that we can get it up into the air. I've actually got a little bit of sacrificial post here that I'm using to knock in that spike, and I'm just using my little fencing spirit level to make sure I get it at least reasonably square, but the ground is so soft it pounds in very easily. Then what I'm going to do, screw the bracket onto the top of that slightly shortened fence post. Do make sure you're putting it on the right way up, because I forgot to do that. And once I've done that, I can just pop the tall fence post into the spike, do it up with a spanner, and that will grip that fence post nice and firmly, and I can then hang the energizer up above where it's getting plenty of sunshine even when the sun is low in the winter. I may need to take it down in very strong winds, time will tell. Now this is what the system looks like, and as you can see, it's up out of those shadows, it's in the sunshine, and it's going to be doing the very best it can to keep that battery charged even in winter sun. With the energizer in place, we need an earth stake. Earth stakes work because what happens is the energizer puts power into the fence, and then when a predator touches the fence, the power goes from the fence through the predator into the ground. It returns to the energizer through an earth stake pushed into the ground, and that completes the circuit. So the better your earth stake, the better the performance of your fence. And I want to show you three of the ones that are available. On the right is a perfectly standard 1 meter long round bar earth stake, and that will work absolutely fine, but there are better choices. Next to it is a 1 meter long, what's called a T-bar earth stake, and you can see how much heavier duty, how much longer it will last. And the T-bars also come in a 1.5 meter length, and that's what I'm using because that will reach a long way down into the soil. And when the weather's dry, having a longer, thicker, deeper earth stake will really improve the performance of your fence. Honestly, now at the moment the soil is so soft that I can pound that all the way in remarkably simply. Now it does give me a little bit of a problem because the normal cables that would connect your energizer to your earth bond and to the fence are a bit short because I've got my energizer up in the air. That's easy to fix. And what I'm using here to fix it is some lead out cable. That is a very thick core cable, normally used when you're using a mains powered energiser and you keep that energiser indoors and you connect it through a thick cable out to your fence. But here I'm using it to manufacture longer cables, both to patch around the gates and also to connect the energiser to the earth stake and the fence. With the energiser wired in, it's time to test the electric fence. There's always a little bit of fine tuning to do when you do a new installation. And this is my favourite electric fence tester. It's got 10 bright LEDs on it. You press in the button and touch it on the fence, and they will then light up, showing you between 1 and 10 kilovolts powering that circuit. And what I really like is it's got a sort of red, amber, green colour to it that tells you whether you've got anything to worry about. On this installation, I needed to get a couple of sags out of the circuit that were causing shorts and kick some dead leaves away from the bottom line, and then it's working really, really well. That's great to test the installation, but it doesn't let me monitor it. And for continuous monitoring, we found these new units that we really like. They're mainly designed for tape, but you can make them work on poultry mesh. And what you need to do for that is to clip them to the top line, but support them against one of the poles. And if you look at the light there, what you can see is you then get a continuous green flash. And that flash is indicating there's at least 3000 volts powering through that circuit, and that's enough power to really deter a predator. That's great because you can check at a glance anytime you're passing that your electric fence is working properly. Where it really comes into its own is shutting up the chickens at night, or even as we're sort of pulling the curtains in the cottage, we can glance out of the window and we can tell just by looking that that steady green pulse is there, and we know that the chickens are protected for the night.
Well, thanks for joining us on a cold, frosty day. I'm sorry if I've got dragon's breath streaming from my mouth, but it's still below freezing here. This was our electric fence setup. It wasn't without its challenges. We've had to get over soft ground, we've had to get over a lack of mains power, hence using this clever piece of kit, which is the sort of solar panel, it's the energizer, it's the battery, all in one. We've even installed remote monitoring so that Fiona can feel happy when she glances out the window that the chickens are all incredibly safe. Now, everything you've seen today in the electric fence setup is available in our online shop, EnglishCountryLife.com. I'll put a link down in the description, and it's all from the UK supplier, the market leader, Hotline, who we think do the best electric fences. We've been using them right from the time we started keeping chickens, and they've saved our flock more than once. If you need any help designing your own setup, do feel free to reach out to us through the website. There's a little link there, marked Contact Us, and I'd be very happy to talk through with you what you're trying to achieve and make suggestions of the right setup for you. If you've enjoyed today's video, can you spare us 5 seconds? Give us a thumbs up down below. If you've got any questions on electric fencing, on runs, on coops, on feeders, on drinkers, leave it down in the comments and we'll do everything we can to answer it, either in the comments or we'll even make a video to answer the question directly. And if you'd like to see those videos and everything else we do, tap on subscribe, hit the bell next to it, you'll hear every time we upload a new video. But for today, thanks for watching. It's goodbye from me, it's goodbye from the chickens you might hear in the background. Come back and see us soon. Take care.